Okay, right up front real quick, please push the subscribe button so that you can get future videos. Comments, I'm open to all kinds of comments. I got thick skin, I can take it. This is going to be probably the most important piece of material you've ever heard from the Bible. Okay? Back in the last video, I was referencing scripture that I didn't tell you about. It's John 4:23. The Father wishes us to worship Him. John 4:24. God is a spirit. That's speaking of the Word. And they that worship Him must, that's the emphatic must that is down in Isaiah 28:9-10. For precept must be upon precept. This is going to be loaded with precepts. Okay? John 10:34-35. This is about Adam and Eve. Is it not written in your law, the Torah, it's the first 5 books, I said ye are gods? John 10:35. If he called them gods, unto whom the word was of God came, in other words, the word of God came to this person saying, ye are gods. Psalm 82:6. I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are the children of the Most High. In both cases, in John 10:35, it's past tense. I have said, and he also indicates that it's written in the law, which is the Old Testament. First 5 books. 82:6, I have said, is past tense. Where was it initially said? Genesis 3:5. For God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, seeing through the eyes of the flesh, speaking of the soul, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. Hebrews 5:14. And just to show you how the tree of the knowledge of good and evil isn't really bad, that it was an intended thing. Hebrews 5:14. But strong meat belongeth to them that are of full age, even those who by reason of use have their senses exercised to discern both good and evil. Whenever you see the angel of the Lord, know for a fact that Jehovah is there. That's why he's the angel of the Lord. The Lord is Jehovah. He is a morning star, and as I showed you in Exodus 24:10, he is all the clearness of heaven. The serpent isn't the only place that he spoke through. An animal. Numbers 22:20-35 is Balaam's ass. Balaam is kind of not a good guy, and he has a donkey, an ass, and it's going to speak. Okay, so 2 Peter 2:16. But Balaam was rebuked for his iniquity, the dumb ass speaking with a man's voice, which is strange, seeing that this ass is a female. It says that it's a she. And the angel of the Lord is there with a sword. So if the angel of the Lord's there, then Jehovah's there, and Jehovah's actually the one making this animal speak to Balaam. And it's quite an interesting read. So the serpent thing isn't unique. And you go, well, Lucifer was there, right? So why does Exodus 28:13 say that Lucifer was in Eden? Eden means paradise, delightful, flat land. Strong's 7:31 in the Hebrew. Jeremiah 4:26. I beheld, and lo, the fruitful place was a wilderness. The fruitful place is a paradise. It's that paradise, which is before Adam and Eve, that Lucifer was actually in. He was never in the Garden of Eden because there hadn't been any sin committed yet. This would be a paradise as the whole world was when its creation was finished. As I explained previously on another video, angels are flesh and blood. Isaiah 14:11. The worm is spread under thee, speaking of Lucifer, and the worms cover thee. They have a windpipe and vocal cords. Isaiah 28:13. The workmanship of thy tambrets and of thy pipes was prepared in thee in the day that thou wast created. Unlike the morning stars, they could make audible sounds and also communicate like morning stars do without speaking, through thought. 1 Chronicles 21:1. And Satan stood up against Israel and provoked David to number the people. Provoked is to install a thought. David had been told not to censor the people, Satan was upset because David had just killed the last of the Nephilim. He stood up, meaning that he initiated an act. That act was to put a thought into David's head. Angels cannot enter anything at all. Demons can, but not angels, and there were no demons until after the flood. Is Adam the first human? No, he's not. Genesis 1:26, and God said, "Let us make man in our image," number one, after our likeness, number two. Genesis 1:27, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he him. That's image, not likeness. This is only the image and not the likeness. I explained in another interview in another video, that there can be huge amounts of time between the area of a comma. One of the most excellent examples is a passage that Jesus read in Luke 4:17-21. Jesus reads in Luke 4:19, he stops at the comma. This is in Isaiah 61:2, and says, "Today is this fulfilled." However, where he stops in Luke, it's a period. There has been almost 2,000 years, and the rest of that sentence in Isaiah has yet to be fulfilled. It's speaking of the Magog invasion. With this in mind, let's look at Genesis 2:7. And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. That's for the flesh to function, into his lungs. Colon. Okay, this is the original man. Now we continue the verse. And man became a living soul. 1 Corinthians 15:45. And so it is written, the first man, Adam, was made a living soul. In other words, he pre-existed and was made a living soul. 1 Corinthians 15:47. The first man is of the earth, earthy. Genesis 5:1. In the day that God created man in the likeness of God, that's Genesis 5:1. It's quite a ways past the original creation, which is the image. So the image is made, then man lives for a very long period of time, and then Adam is absconded and thrown in the garden, and he winds up with a soul. Okay, what other indicators are there? Genesis 2:1. There was not a man to till the ground, as opposed to a man to dress it and to keep it. To till the ground is to plant it. To dress it and keep it is that it already exists, and now you're just taking care of it. These are in direct relationship to Genesis 2:5. And every plant of the field before it was in the earth, as opposed to Genesis 1:11, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. Every plant of the field before it was in the earth was in the original creation, and then the plants were planted that came from eternity. The seeds that fell off in that will subsequently raise the other plants again in the restitution of the planet after the judgment is over. In the creation, the earth needed to be planted. In the restitution of the earth after the judgment of ice, the seed from the previous verse was already in the ground. Keep in mind that Adam means man, and the progressive development of man from image to image and likeness spans a very long time. This verse explains this. 1 Corinthians 15:46. Howbeit that was not first which is spiritual, the soul, but that which is natural, the flesh, and afterward that which is spiritual, the soul. That verse pretty much encapsulates it. 1 Timothy 2:13. For Adam was first formed, given a soul, then Eve. Listen to what Adam says concerning Eve. Genesis 2:23. And Adam said, this is now, bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. Like she was literally bone of his bone and flesh of his flesh. Because she was taken out of man. It means, out means away from. an exact replica. Okay, but in a really unique way. Genesis 2:24, and shall cleave, that means to stick tightly together. So when a man has to leave his mother and father and cleave unto his wife, what is he doing? He's cleaving means to stick together. It doesn't mean erotica, okay? It means literally to be so tightly close, which happens to be the reverse of that is what happened with Adam and Eve. She was taken away from his side. Okay, cleave, stick tightly together, and they shall be one flesh. So they were one flesh, and then they were separated. Okay, cleave unto his wife, which is the reversal of how Eve was formed. Okay, this would be one of the okay. Isaiah 45:12, I have made the earth and created man upon it. This is the original man. Man means Adam and the tribe of man. The original man was created in the image of God, but not in his likeness. Isaiah 45:18, God himself that formed the earth and made it, he hath established it, he created it not in vain, he formed it to be inhabited. Jeremiah 4 is the story of what happened to the original creation due to the rebellion. As it progressively moved from the place of its creation, the earth, in Jeremiah 4:25, I beheld and lo, there was no man. God came down, he's looking around, there's no man around. He knew where they were. Jeremiah 4:26, and all the cities were broken down. So man's been there, man's had cities. In the original creation, not the restitution. So where was man? Man had been warned and had created cities underground. For instance, the cities have been recently been discovered in Turkey, for instance. And the American Indians, the ant people, if you go online and look at these underground cities in Turkey, you'll understand the Indian term. They look like anthills inside. In Genesis 2:8, God puts man in the fruitful place. In Genesis 2:15, God took the man and put him in the garden. Adam of the Adam and Eve story was not physically formed. He pre-existed the process of the likeness. He in fact was a survivor of the first judgment of ice and was not alone. Genesis 3:19, God speaks to fallen Adam, till thou return unto the ground, buried in the earth, a grave, for out of it wast thou taken. You were taken out of that and put in the garden. Adam had been lured out of the ground by God to be placed in a small version of what once was. The Garden of Eden of Adam and Eve, it was only a small piece of what was when the whole planet was this way. Genesis 4:14, and it shall come to pass that everyone that findeth me shall slay me. This is Cain talking to God, and Cain saying, anybody that finds me, they're going to kill me. It's interesting, God doesn't say, Cain, there's no one else here but you and your parents. God agrees with him and puts a mark on him. A while later, in a fair distance from home, Cain finds a wife in Nod, Genesis 4:17. So a silly question is, why didn't God take a woman, as he had Adam, and just plop a soul in her and put her in the garden with Adam? For one of the same reasons he made Eve from Adam. It's a very unique relationship that will protect Adam despite himself. Genesis 2:16, saying, of every tree of the garden thou mayest eat freely. This is when the flesh, or image, was first placed in the garden. 2:17, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat. Each one of these is stopped by a colon. This is when the soul, or likeness, is created inside the flesh, and it's told that you cannot eat of the tree. Continue, for in the day that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die. This is muth in the original language, which means dying. Thou shalt surely die. This is the point where a particular morning star, essence, or consciousness is placed full measure in the soul, exactly like what will happen when Mary's baby, Jesus, is born, and the glory of God shows up to the shepherds and scares the crap out of them. The consciousness of Jehovah is going to leave his all the cleanness of heaven body and enter that baby the same way. This is how these two Adams are very similar and different, and they're compared in the scriptures all the time. This would be the morning star put into Adam. This would be one of the rebellious morning stars, as Jehovah was not. Jehovah esteemed righteousness. The soul is the new kid. Adam's flesh comes from a condemned world. The morning star has been condemned, but still has an attitude issue. The soul is the man in the middle, and succumbs to the other's wishes, is in the transgression. Job 31:33. If I covered my transgressions as Adam, by hiding mine iniquity in my bosom. Adam's soul had a plan, and it was to defy God's authority about eating of the tree. 1 Timothy 2:14. And Adam was not deceived, but the woman being deceived by Adam was in the transgression. Adam has always been the bad guy. Hedonistic religion blames everyone else and makes Adam the fall guy. No. Jehovah was in the serpent. It's not the bad guy. Eve was lied to by Adam. She's not the bad guy. Bad guy is Adam. God knew Adam's iniquity and knew that Adam would never eat of the fruit. Okay? He had to have an accomplice. The morning star understood it would return to its former state, dead, and the flesh knew it would die. You see, the only one that had never seen or experienced death was the soul. So the creation of Eve was for many reasons, and her specific formation directly from Adam created a type of symbiotic relationship. If she died, he'd die, and vice versa. This is why God told her this is why God answered and told her that she could eat of the fruit. She was function off of Adam's expression of it. So what does Jehovah say to her? Okay. Genesis 3:4. And the serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not surely die. Remember Genesis 2:17, thou shalt surely die? Same guy speaking. If she in part is exempted, then Adam in part is exempted. Because killing her that is made completely from him would require his death as well. But understand this, Adam was willing for her to die to get to that fruit. So you have to see God's plan and his morals and ethics, and you have to look at Adam's plan and his moral and ethics. He was willing for her to die. Listen to the guilty. Genesis 3:12. And the man said, It's your fault, God, the woman who thou gavest to be with me. Wow. He's saying, I wouldn't have been able to do it if you hadn't given me the woman. What a guy. Genesis 3:15 is not between the serpent and the woman when it says that he's going to place enmity. It's actually, it is the protection for the woman from the man. I will put enmity between thee, Adam, and the woman. And there is an enmity between men and women. It's a mandate. However, God creates a mandate, Genesis 3:16, which says, And thy desire, speaking to Eve, shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. This is really how this whole process works now. Adam's iniquity and sin also destroyed the possibility of ever having a perfect relationship, because a mandate from God actually causes naturally what appears to be a natural differences between the genders. Okay. Genesis 2:25. This is before the fruit. And they were both naked and were not ashamed. After the fruit, Genesis 3:10. I was afraid because I was naked. What happened? Genesis 3:5. Then your eyes shall be opened. The term blind in the Bible often refers to the soul. 2 Corinthians 5:7. For we walk by faith, not by sight. And remember, moof, dying thou shalt surely die. The soul in the morning star residing in Adam could not see, and trusted in the flesh, which had always been naked. And so you basically have three autonomous beings in one scenario. They're all in the same area, but they're pretty much self-autonomous to this point. When they ate of the fruit instantly, dying means instantly, and thou shalt surely die means over a period of time. When they ate of the fruit instantly, the morning star was vexed to near nothingness. Boom, just like that. The flesh collapsed, and as it fell, the soul became intertwined to prevent the immediate death of the flesh. If your soul leaves your body now, your flesh will be catatonic. It can't take care of itself. It can't feed itself. It can't do anything. Okay? And immediately the soul could hear and see. So anyway, the soul becomes intertwined to prevent the immediate death of the flesh, and immediately the soul could hear and see through the function of the flesh. Your soul is actually looking through the eyes of this physical body. Your soul is actually hearing through the physical function of this body. When you read Genesis 3:9-13, you get the impression that the connection that had previously